So, I recently made my 10th blood donation. The donation center offered a $15 Visa gift card that day. It was a relatively modest incentive that packed the waiting room with donors. This small data point reveals volumes about the contradictions embedded in America's blood donation system, where altruism and profit exist in an increasingly unsustainable tension. The crowded waiting room demonstrates what behavioral economists have long understood. People respond to incentives, yet our blood donation infrastructure remains stubbornly committed to an outdated model that relies on moral obligation rather than fair compensation. This commitment persists despite clear evidence that it fails to generate adequate supply and creates an unnecessary psychological burden on donors. The journey of donated blood through the healthcare system reveals a sophisticated supply chain where value is captured at every step except the beginning. Blood banks sell units to hospitals for $200 to $300, who then mark them up for $900 to $3,500 when billing patients. For especially valuable types like O negative, the universal donor, medical prices can spike even higher during shortages. This economic reality exposes the fundamental contradiction in how we think about blood donation. While donors are told their contribution is priceless, the system has actually assigned it a very specific price that generates profit for every participant except the donor. The blood bank covers its costs and pays the staff, the hospital generates revenue, but the person providing the essential resource receives only cookies and a sticker. The standard arguments against paying donors don't withstand scrutiny either. Consider the claim that compensation would compromise blood safety by attracting donors who might lie about their health status. This ignores the sophisticated testing regime already in place. Let's be real, if compromised blood is getting through, it's failure of the screening protocols, not donor motivation. Similarly, the notion that payments would somehow taint the moral purity of donation reveals a particularly narrow view of both economics and ethics. Many donors already have mixed motivations. Some manage health conditions through regular donation, others appreciate having free health screening, while many just simply want to help others. These varying motivations don't make the blood any less valuable or the act any less worthy. This moral purity argument becomes even more absurd when we consider the broader landscape of medical donation. We readily compensate egg donors, sperm donors, and plasma donors. Bone marrow donors receive reimbursement for their time and discomfort, yet somehow their contributions are considered, quote, morally compromised by compensation. The plasma flowing through our healthcare system doesn't become less life-saving because its donor received payment. The children born through egg donation aren't any less precious because money changed hands. Perhaps most revealing is the paternalistic handwriting about how compensation might disproportionately attract low-income donors. This concern masks a deeper classism, the unstated assumption that we must protect poor people from their own economic decisions, even when those decisions involve safe, regulated medical procedures that benefit both the individual and society. The implied alternative has the potential to be darkly comic. We would prefer to seek riskier ways than make ends meet. Is it better for someone to sell plasma, a more involved and frequent procedure, or eggs, a significantly more impassive process, than receive fair compensation for blood donation? The contradiction becomes even sharper when we consider the timing restrictions on blood donation, which is typically every 8 to 12 weeks. Even with generous compensation, this natural limitation prevents any possibility of financial exploitation. We're not talking about desperate daily donations. We're talking about a responsible, medically supervised schedule that could provide modest but reliable supplemental income while expanding our blood supply. The horror. In this theatrical performance of virtue, we've cast uncompensated donors as heroes and would-be paid donors as somehow morally suspect. A script that serves everyone except those providing the actual resource and is nothing more than a convenient narrative that transforms economic exploitation into ethical imperative. The true perversity lies in not paying people for their blood, but in constructing elaborate moral frameworks to justify not doing it. The best part is, the system's insistence on unpaid donation also prevents more sophisticated forms of altruism. A paid donation system could easily allow donors to direct their compensation to charities, effectively doubling their social impact. Instead, we've created a framework where taking any compensation is seen as compromising the act, rather than expanding its potential benefit. In lieu of direct compensation, blood banks have embraced gamification, where they offer rewards like license plate holders for reaching gallon milestones, putting names on walls, and creating point-based reward systems. This approach attempts to manufacture meaning through symbolic recognition while avoiding material compensation. The reward system for blood donation offers a perfect lens through which to observe institutional gaslighting in action. Watch how the magic trick works. Your blood, transformed into a product worth thousands, earns you a sticker. Your repeated life-saving contributions, generating substantial revenue streams throughout the medical system, might eventually merit a license plate holder. The sheer audacity of this exchange rate would be comical if it weren't so revealing. Consider the peculiar cultural logic at play. Your local coffee shop loyalty program offers better material benefits than regularly saving human lives. Let that sink in. Buy enough lattes and you'll earn meaningful rewards. Repeatedly provide a critical medical resource that hospitals bill thousands for. Here's a pin celebrating your gallon milestone. What we're witnessing isn't just cheapness, but a sophisticated system of value extraction draped in thin garments of recognition theater. The blood banking industry has perfected a perverse alchemy where they transform actual value into symbolic gestures, all while maintaining a straight face. The system's genius lies in how it's normalized. We've collectively accepted a reality where people providing a literal life-saving resource receive recognition that wouldn't match the bonus welcome on a basic store credit card. The real sleight of hand isn't the minimal rewards themselves, but how the system has convinced us to view them as appropriate or even generous. When you provide a product that generates thousands in revenue, getting a commemorative t-shirt isn't recognition. It's the blood bank's version of a corporation throwing a pizza party in lieu of raises or bonuses. Yet, we've been conditioned to smile and accept these tokens, to see them as meaningful acknowledgments rather than what they are. Symbols of how thoroughly the system has normalized its own exploitive logic. Interestingly, South Korea offers an instructive counterexample. Their system provides blood credits to donors, guaranteeing them access to free blood if they ever need it. This creates a direct personal incentive that assigns individual self-interest with public health needs. Most donors never use their credits, but the system recognizes a fundamental truth that people are motivated by protecting themselves and their families. This model works because it acknowledges human nature instead of fighting it. Rather than relying on guilt and moral obligation, it creates a practical reason to donate. The result? Higher donation rates and a more reliable blood supply, achieved without complex moral arguments or emotional manipulation. The problem is really that the current blood donation system reflects a broader pattern in American society, where guilt and moral obligation are routinely used to extract value while avoiding fair compensation. We see this dynamic in underpaid teachers buying classroom supplies for the children, in restaurants paying below minimum wage because servers make tips, and in companies requesting unpaid overtime from team players on salary. This system persists even though they create worse outcomes than straightforward compensation would achieve. This is because they serve institutional interests, allowing organizations to capture value while offloading costs onto individuals through moral pressure. The packed waiting room for a $15 gift card points towards a simpler solution. Pay people fairly for their time and resources. This doesn't preclude altruism either if donors could choose to redirect their compensation to charities or decline it entirely. But it would recognize the reality that blood has quantifiable value in our healthcare system, and that the people providing it deserve a share in that value. Following the system's own economic logic, we could conclude that human blood has no inherent value. After all, if it truly were valuable, wouldn't the market demand we compensate those who provide it? The healthcare industry, ever eager to monetize every aspect of human existence, has somehow decided that this one critical resource should flow freely from the veins of volunteers. How curious that in a system where every bandage, every pill, every moment of a nurse's time comes with a price tag, but blood alone must remain unsullied by commerce. But wait, observe how quickly this supposed worthiness evaporates once the blood leaves the donor's body. Watch the miraculous transformation as it moves through the system. This allegedly valueless substance suddenly commands hundreds in processing fees and thousands in hospital charges. Behold, as the same institutions that insist payment would taint the purity of donation have no moral qualms about generating substantial revenue from every unit. The blood that was worth nothing in the donor's arm becomes worth everything in the patient's vein. This quantum state of blood's value, simultaneously priceless and worthless, depending on who's measuring, reveals the tortured logic required to maintain our current system. It's a paradox worthy of Schrödinger. Blood exists in a superposition of economic states, worth nothing when we discuss compensating donors, but worth thousands when billing patients. The same organizations that reject donor payment on moral grounds seem to have no ethical concerns about marking up this freely given resource by orders of magnitude. Note how this logic applies nowhere else in healthcare. Pharmaceutical companies aren't expected to provide drugs for free out of moral obligation. Medical device manufacturers aren't asked to donate their products for the greater good. Surgeons aren't told their services should be given freely because saving lives is its own reward. Only blood donors are expected to operate entirely outside the economic system that governs every other aspect of healthcare delivery. This selective application of market principles exposes the fundamental dishonesty at the heart of the argument. Blood isn't worthless. It's precisely because it is so valuable that such elaborate moral frameworks have been constructed to justify not paying for it. The system's insistence on unpaid donation isn't about maintaining purity, it's about maintaining profit margins. In this light, the moral arguments against compensation reveal themselves as what they've always been: a thin ethical veneer over a thick foundation of economic self interest. The blood donation system needs reformation, not revolution. The infrastructure for collecting, testing, and distributing blood works well, but the compensation model is outdated. A system that fairly compensates donors while maintaining high safety standards is entirely possible, as demonstrated by the plasma donation industry and other international examples. The question isn't whether paying donors would work, because the packed waiting room for a $15 gift card already answered that. The question is whether we're ready to abandon a moral framework that confuses exploitation for virtue and replace it with one that recognizes both the human and economic value of blood donation. Until then, donors will continue receiving license plate holders for providing a product that generates thousands in revenue, which is a transaction that reveals a lot about how our healthcare system really works and who it truly serves.